Mm.
In other words, we're not going out with our army.
I know, but you're always going out with your army, because if you don't, then Zerg kills you.
There is a special timing.
Okay, a Forge Fast Expand.
Yep.
Um,
Think of something in the mid game that'll prevent us from going out with our army. And
Mutas,
Mutalisks, right?
obviously.
Mutas. What does Mutas do versus Protoss?
Nice grammar. They keep you in your base, because you can't do anything against them, because cannons are underpowered. That's tangent.
Another topic for another day. Cannons are underpowered. Cannons are underpowered. Discuss. No. But yeah, very true. Mutalisks are going to keep the Protoss contained in his bases rather, and it's going to kind of pin him down. It's going to force his army to stay there, jumping from mineral line to mineral line, and Protoss has to just play a defensive macro game. He kind of wants to still macro up, but he wants to play defense. He's not going to go out and do a base race. He'll lose. So this is the timing that you want armor. Why do you think you would want armor in this scenario, Jshore?
Well, for one, Mutalisks are obviously accompanied with Zerglings, usually, which hit fast, but not for very much.
Right.
So armor's going to scale very well against them.
Yes. Plus, it's going to help the buildings.
And it's going to help your buildings, yeah.
That too. Very true. What else? What do you think?
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, there's two more that I can think of at the top of my head that I think of when I see Mutalisks in game. The first one's going to be this. Mutalisks are also like Zerglings. They don't hit for very much. But they do have something called a glaive attack from Brood War. It's actually going to be a bounce. So that means every time they attack, they will hit up to 2 more multiple targets. They're going to hit their primary target, the secondary target nearby, and a tertiary target nearby that. But every time it bounces, it'll do less damage. It's kind of like a chain attack.
The third bounce does like 3 damage.
So the first time it attacks, it will do 8 damage on a primary target. Then it'll reduce it by 3 damage, I believe. Go down to 5 damage. And then the next one will take off another 2 points and do 3 damage. So, but that is affected by every armor you have. So if you had +1 armor, the first target would take 1 minus what the Mutalisk would do. So instead of 8, it would do 7. But the secondary target with armor would also take less damage. So now that unit's benefiting. So that one, instead of taking 5, will take 4. And finally, the third target, instead of taking 3, will take 2. And this is going to be good because that +3 armor, what do you think is going to happen, Jshore?
The last targets are taking 2 and 1 damage. Bam.
Actually,
or do you just take 0 damage? Can you actually take 0 damage?
You're going to take 0 damage. The other one's not going to get hit at all. But
I thought it was actually wow.
No, that one's not going to take any damage at all. But the second one's going to take 1 damage. It's going to take. In other words, it's not going to hurt at all. So the only thing that's going to be hitting is kind of just the primary target. Because the secondary, okay, 1 damage. Say they have 20 Mutalisks. It's going to hit up to 20 damage, but in theory, 20 damage, it sounds like a lot, but that's really not a lot.
You cut it by 9.
Sorry?
I think you should cut it by 9, so.
Oh, 9? Well, it's 9:17 here.
What?
It's 9. I'm Eastern Standard Time.
No, I said the damage should be cut by 9.
Oh, the damage. Cut it by 9. Why?
Because it's hitting 3 targets, and that's 3 armor on each of them.
Oh, yeah. Basically, So, armor is going to scale a lot better versus Mutalisks because of the fact that, well, a lot of what the Mutalisk is attacking, the damage on those targets will be negated. And this is better than armor, better than attack, because really nothing that the Protoss has, ironically, is that great against Mutalisk. Like, you'll think Blinkstalker, good, that's kind of what our options is, but they don't do damage against light, and Mutalisk is light, so, I mean, you're not really getting a lot of bonus damage out there. So you're kind of getting another +1 attack, which, as we were just talking about what the 1 damage the Mutalisk does on, like, the secondary target, what is 1 extra damage on Mutalisk? Because that's like nothing, right? But with the armor, that's giving us the benefit of, well, our photon cannons are a little bit harder to kill, right?
A little.
Our stalkers and probes are a little bit harder to kill. The bounce attack on other probes, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking a lot less damage on our probe line, we're taking a lot less damage on our buildings and photon cannons, and we're taking a lot less damage on our actual stalker base. And the final reason why armor is going to be ideal in this defensive macro game versus, let's say, a mutilating style, is because of the fact that weapons do not scale or affect High Templar. And High Templar is a unit that you're going to want against the Mutalisk circling composition because of the psionic storm ability.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Now, why do you want armor instead of weapons for High Templar, Jshore?
They don't have an attack.
As of now, they do not have an attack, aside from Psionic Storm. Therefore, there would be no point in getting weapons.
Sort of like getting armor for Archons.
Exactly. So you want...
Which I may or may not have done before.
I'll leave it at that. So the armor, sure, it's not going to be that great with the High Templar, but it's going to be better than nothing, what you would get with the weapons. So the armor is, once again, the winner in this scenario. With the High Templar, all around, armor is ideal. You could get weapons also, because obviously weapons are still going to be good with your Zealots against the Zerglings, but if you get to the point where you're at 1-1, the Twilight Council just finishes getting your blink, now you're wondering which to get, the weapons or the armor, always go for the armor. You're going to see a lot more usefulness in that, and you're going to have a better chance of winning the game altogether if you get armor versus mutilating, or mutilate anything. Muta Roach, just mutas in general. You want that armor. And you want it you want to get it to 3 as soon as possible. So, anything more on that, Jshore?
No.
Fair enough.
Covered a lot. Said you covered a lot.
Covered a lot. Now let's talk about PvP. Here's a fun one.
Yeah.
What do you know about PvP, Jshore?
There isn't a lot that changes, except there's really subtle timings. Like, if we're PvPing and I get an upgrade and you attack the instant, like in the middle of that upgrade, assuming we're the same skill level, just assuming here, then you'll win that attack because I just put 100/100 into an upgrade that you don't have but hasn't come into effect for me yet. So
I don't know. I think you can out micro me, Jshore. You might still take the win. Very true.
But at the same time, if I took it and you didn't attack, and I snuck in that upgrade, and you attacked after I had it, then you would probably lose that attack. Again, assuming same skill level.
So it's basically risk reward, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that ace in the hole card where you could get it, but there's that factor where you can lose. But here's my question: given what you just said, is it always worth it to get it? And then at the last second, if he's coming to attack you, you spot him with your observer. Can you just cancel it?
Yeah, you could.
And get your money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're gonna get all your money back as opposed to like getting a Nexus and canceling it, right?
Mm-hmm. So
technically, there isn't too much conflict in terms of getting that upgrade, right?
This is true.
So my question is, in PvP,
Well, what's the difference? Anyways.
When is it ideal, or is it okay to go forge and pump some upgrades? Is that common? Is that the right answer? It's like, do we think of upgrades like weapon and armor and shields in PvP?
I've never seen that. Like, usually early game is all about... I mean, I don't know, I just never see Forge as part of a PvP build. Early.
Yep. There's basically none out there other than the one I made that includes a Forge early, unless they're cannon rushing.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, they probably won't benefit from much, aside from the armor for their photon cannons. We'll have to tell Combat X a new build. So,
because those probes will do a lot less damage to cannons with +3
and
armor.
pylons, mind you. So, if you might want to consider rushing 3 armor and then getting cannon rush going down.
Yeah, but there's also the problem where they'll have a zealot there at that point. So. Because 3 upgrades, that's like 10 minutes in research time alone.
Yeah.
So
they might have
maybe
they might have a zealot. What if they were playing greedy, and they were like,
What if you cannon rush in their base with the forge, steal their Vespene gas,
Yes.
and use that gas to
And
upgrade
proxy
inside?
Nexus to get
Yeah.
gas there faster. I like
That
it.
may work if
That
they don't scout.
sounds like a time where you would want your upgrades for armor on a cannon rush. But in reality, I think there is a time where you want to start thinking about upgrades in PvP.
Mm-hmm.
PvP is very tight. If any a matchup you were going to want upgrades in, it's actually going to be PvP. Why? Because, like I said, it's going to be really tight. He's going Stalker, you're going Stalker, he's going Immortal, I'm going Immortal. It's going to come down to not only micro, but everything tiny in PvP can flip it one way or the other. Positioning, micro, a Guardian Shield, a Force Field. How many units were in your Guardian Shield?
There's
Were
not
your
much to
Zealots
give you
in
an
front?
advantage.
You could have had the same amount of units as I had, but my Zealots were in the front, your Zealots were in the back. You lost.
Mm-hmm.
Your Zealots weren't tanking, your Stalkers were. You lost. But everything tiny can flip the tide of battle. Therefore, something as major as an upgrade is actually huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because, say you're attacking, say we turn into a macro game, and you both took a Nexus, and it's kind of like in the mid-game, and you're kind of sitting at like 100 supply, and he's sitting at 100 supply. Maybe even 120 supply, because, say you got a Forge. But you're playing a defensive macro game, you're sitting back, and you're getting a armor upgrade. That's actually going to affect you really well, because not only do you have the defender's advantage, but you also, instead of having the extra 20 units, whatever it may be, the extra 20 supply, an extra, a couple Zealots, extra 7 or 8 Zealots, you could have had the armor upgrade, which is actually going to scale exponentially with every single unit that you have. In other words, the more units you have, the more important upgrades become. So, of course, in a 200-200 situation, it's going to look better for the guy that has a 3-3 rather than, 0-0, obviously. But in the early game, upgrade's kind of hard to make it worth it, because like you were saying, Jshore, while you're researching an upgrade, they come in with their 50 supply worth, your 20 supply or 30 supply worth, and the upgrade kind of won't, you can't justify the +1 anything in the early game versus Protoss.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
So what do you think would be better, weapons or armor first in a PvP, in terms of deciding what you want?
It's again probably just going to depend on what composition you're going for.
Yep.
Because if you're going to go fast Colossus, same thing. You don't want armor on those because it's not going to do you any good.
Right, exactly. But what would be good for armor?
Maybe charge that Archon timing.
Yep, Charge Archon
Yeah.
would be a good timing to get armor. Because Archons, really, you're not using the Archons for damage anyways. It's all about getting a good surround off on your opponent. And the charge lots, as long as it can survive, it's all about getting the tanks in. And you should usually use against an opponent who's going for something like Colossus. You're going to have this smaller army. You don't care. You're just pumping pure numbers. You don't care about damage. You're going to have the numbers on them, and numbers is what's going to get you the win. So that's an example. If you're going for Charge Lot Archon, you are going to want, during a mid-game timing, then you are going to want some armor at some point in the game, rather than just Charge Lot Archons without the armor. It's going to work so much better to have that extra +1 armor. It's unbelievable. Why? Because think of Stalkers. How long do Stalkers take to kill a Zealot without armor? Really long time. Right, Jshore? Especially Jshore with Micro and that Stalker. It's going to take a really long time to kill that Zealot. Were you just sawing your microphone? Did I hear you? I heard something.
And by the way, I just want to point out that there is an actual typing tool inside Paint.
Oh, okay.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Because that looks horrible.
I like it, bro. I kind of like it. It's got the whole custom design.
Someone's been watching too much Destiny.
Destiny? Did Destiny do that? I don't know.
No, you said Brohan.
No, I didn't.
You almost did.
No, I almost. Would you read my mind? He's almost. He's going to say it, but he changed his mind, bro.
Well, it sounded like you did.
Is that? I didn't even know that's a Destiny thing.
Okay, maybe it's me that watches too much
I
Destiny.
think it's
I
you
don't
that
know.
watches too much Destiny. All right. How did the typing tool get into Destiny? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah. So PvP essentially the matchup where upgrades are very important. As you start approaching the second base and you've got that starting getting saturated, getting mined, and you're kind of working your way up into the 120, 130 supply, I'm starting to think about dropping down a forge if I do have one already, and getting some upgrades. And depending on what
Especially
my
if you're not
compensation
going
is.
robotics.
Right.